John. Nice to have you here.
My pleasure.
And what I'd like to ask you about first is some legislation that you co-sponsored or
Yes.
sponsored yourself.
Correct.
In regard to like amnesty on sales tax
Yes.
for people doing their school shopping.
About a year ago, I was working on that bill because I realized that here in Northeast Ohio, specifically where we sit, families, carloads of families go to Pennsylvania when it comes time to school shop because they don't have sales tax on clothing. So I began to do some research and looked at some of the options we had. And we developed a bill that would allow for a sales tax holiday, and that's what it's called in other states too. Other states do this as well, to allow forgiveness, if you will, of the sales tax on the first 3 days, or the first weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of August, just in time to go back to school. And that is important. I didn't want to go too much later than August because some schools, especially in other areas of the state, start a little bit earlier than we do, and yet you want to make it close enough because of kids growing that they don't grow out of their clothes too soon. So anything to do with school-related clothing, technology for computers, up to $1,000 would be forgiven. And I just thought it was a good way to help our local businesses, our bricks and mortars, to keep that money here. Yesterday, which would be Wednesday, February 26th, the bill that had been working its way, there were two bills, one in the House, which is ours, and one in the Senate. They're companion bills. We were working with Senator Bacon. The Senate bill actually not only passed out of committee, but it also passed through the Senate yesterday. It was almost unanimous. I think there was only 2 votes or so against it. It's coming to the House. Ours had already been introduced, and we were just waiting for it to be heard in committee for the first sponsor testimony. I really do think it will pass. Now, will it be in effect before this August? That's our goal, and we'll see where it goes.
When do you see that bill coming up for a vote?
Well, that is a good question because the House is not going to be in session next week. Now, of course, I have to go down. There are some committee meetings and there's some other business that needs to be done. So I don't think that committee is going to be meeting within the next 2 weeks. So we're going to have to go through sponsor testimony. If we could get that out realistically by late March, mid-April, that would be a comfortable timeline.
Okay, if you want to discuss what's going on with the Lyme Disease legislation.
There's a major problem in Ashtabula County. You can ask the veterinarians, they're on the front line first because of the deer ticks attaching themselves to dogs. In fact, I can tell you this, in November, we were number 1 in the state for ticks that were Lyme carriers. 12% of all the cases in Ohio came from Ashtabula County. The nearest after that was Scioto County with a little over 1%. And the problem with Lyme disease is that it's sporadic. There are pockets, and there's no linear progression. So at your house, for example, you might have deer ticks, but they may or may not have Lyme. 2 miles down the road, I could have ticks, or I may not have ticks, and mine might have Lyme, or again, they might not. So what we want to do ultimately, and we're working with an entomologist from Ohio State who's now at Patterson Air Force Base, we need to be able to send those ticks away to be analyzed. There are 2 components here that I'm working on. One is a resolution to kind of get CDC to get moving in terms of developing a better test for Lyme, because right now the tests that anybody would take for Lyme could come back false negative, could come back false positive. It's not totally conclusive. So there are additional tests that might have to be run. So what's ultimately going to happen as this comes online is that I'll introduce more legislation that would set the pathway for outdoorsmen, and that would include our agricultural sector, our farmers, anybody who might come in contact with a tick, to locate using the cellular device, the location of that particular tick where it was found, mail it in to the state, have it tested, and if it comes up positive, we'll put that into a scatter plot map so that we can begin statewide to plot where these hot spots are for ticks. Again, we want people to enjoy the outdoors, but we also want them to be aware of the precautions that they really need to take. So we've been working on the resolution to move CDC to a better classification system and such, and also we've been working on a bill that would, at the time of a blood draw, time of a test, have the patient receive notice about the false positive, false negative, just to be aware of what's going on. And even that, we've looped in the Medical Association, the Nurses Association, some of the leading doctors in veterinarian science, in entomology, that sort of thing, so that we have a comprehensive bill. Yesterday, that would be Wednesday the 26th, out of the House was passed our bill to proclaim, if you will, March as Maple Syrup Month in Ohio. It had passed out of committee unanimously 2 weeks ago, cleared the House floor yesterday, and I might add it's a really sweet bill that received great bipartisan support. The maple industry is alive and well and booming, and the Maple Tour, Maple Madness as they call it, will take place March 8th of this year. We wanted to recognize that. Again, it's a niche where our farmers can, most of them are small family type operations, supplement their income with their sugar houses and such. And where
do you want to go?
So calamity days came up to the House floor for a vote just yesterday, and I mean, there's been a lot of struggles with it because in the state, some areas have not been hit as bad. Others, there are some districts where they've been off 14, 15, 16 days, plus 2-hour delays. And there are high stakes testing that is coming our way with the OGT, a little bit later, the third grade reading guarantee. So it's been a difficult, and Mother Nature has not cooperated, but it's been a difficult bill to address. It did not pass the House yesterday. And again, the earliest that any action would take place will be 2 weeks from yesterday, which would make it March
12th, 13th, 14th.
12th, 14th, somewhere in there. There is a conference committee now meeting that will resolve the differences between the House and the Senate to get something workable. I voted for the Senate version the other day, and a lot of, I believe all the people surrounding me on the Democratic side voted for it because we realize how important it is to get this thing in the rearview mirror so that schools can plan. They have the option of adding a half an hour on to the school day. They have the option, if they want, to go on Saturdays. The idea is that the local schools can make those sorts of decisions, but we can't do anything until we come up with, in the legislature, a plan that meets approval by both the Senate and the House. So I'd love to tell you that there is some sort of concrete plan. There is not. There's still hesitation, and it does bother me, and want to continue to put pressure on the powers that be on the other side of the aisle to come back with something that we can definitely move on.
What are their objections?
Well,
or concerns?
There are many concerns. For one thing, the testing is an issue. We just can't tack days on at the end of the year because it doesn't do any good for test preparation. We've lost a boatload of days in January and February, and the tests are scheduled for March and April. Different tests, different student population. So we actually, in a perfect world, need those days, need that time made up right now. That's not going to happen. So there has been some movement of the exams, pushing them back later in the year. So the testing issue is one. Another is that we've granted the 5 days, and that everything beyond those 5 calamity days should be made up. I get that. And our teachers, in a perfect world, I'm sure would support that. They want more time with their students. But here's the problem that I don't hear a lot outside of this office talking about. Our agricultural sector depends in part on those people coming out of school at a certain time. I mean, we're getting into hay season in June, and some of these schools would not be out in time in that to help in that arena. The other thing that we have in addition to agriculture is a tourism industry, which would be negatively impacted. So we have an economic issue here at work in addition to an educational issue at work, and that's why it's kind of difficult to sort through. But I see both sides of it, and we really need to address the economic side of the piece with the educational side of the piece.